And so once you've kind of chosen what is going to be your application of risk management, of your real risk management, how you're going to take the risks that you see and take of the assumptions that the management is making and convert them into a risk model, and then use that risk model to drive the business plan or the budget or the investment proposal or the maintenance budget or the procurement budget. Once you've chosen your application of risk analysis, the next thing is to keep in mind that no matter how well you do the math side, on the other part of the equation are people. And culture is absolutely fundamental to the implementation and the application of risk analysis, because it's actually really easy to convince somebody to do quantitative risk analysis, especially if you're doing the quantitative part. It's really easy when you're in the room, but literally the second you step out of the room, they will forget completely and not do it at the next decision. So you could have done the most amazing risk analysis on the deal. And I remember we were buying a mine in Brazil, did some amazing risk analysis there. And literally the next deal, if we weren't kind of present in the room, they probably wouldn't even remember to do the risk analysis. So it's about kind of the mindset as much as it is about the process. So few ideas on how I've tried to change the culture, and there's no golden recipe. It's my general theme behind building a risk culture within the organization is million droplets to the brain. So you actually have no idea which one will work. You just kind of do multiple things consistently all the time, and one of them will grow. So here's what I've done. And by the way, if you've done something different to reinforce risk culture within the organization, share in the comments. Write what you've done. I have sometimes taken position descriptions and tweaked the responsibilities a little bit to include risk-based decision making, planning, risk-based performance management, just kind of reinforce that ownership for making decisions only after risks have been carefully considered. So that's a small thing. Yeah, some HR feel pressures about it because they're lazy and they don't understand it. Some HR feel indifferent and they just let you kind of do it as part of some other changes that they're doing it. Some legal teams feel threatened by it. Some legal teams don't care. Just see how it kind of plays out. It's not a deal breaker if you can't do it or if it's just too difficult. Normally what I've done is I just waited for somebody else to initiate some bigger changes, and then I would just kind of jump on the tail and do the risk changes as part of that. Then the next thing that I usually do is I take all the committee charters, and again, I add like audit committee, different board level committees, management committees, safety committees, and I would just read through the charters and see if there's anything I can add to again reinforce the responsibility for risk-based decision making, planning, performance management. If there is, great, again, initiate the change. If there isn't, fine. Then the third thing that I would always do is some sort of risk management training for decision makers. I always record it and make it available online on the intranet. Some of the sessions I even made available publicly on YouTube channels and corporate YouTube channels. So it's like there's no restrictions. Like if you do some sort of nice, concise session on why risk thinking is important when making decisions and why risk taking is actually a competency that needs to be trained, and all of the kind of story on cognitive biases, system 1, system 2, and different techniques, that CIA uses for improving the quality of decision making. It's a very kind of compelling, nice education. Executives, I wouldn't say I don't know whether they love it, because executives will never admit that they loved something, but I got positive vibes from those conversations. And a lot of people would come and see me afterwards saying, now I understand what risk management is all about, and we have this kind of complex, uncertain problem. Can we borrow some of your quants to build a risky model for it and help us make decisions? So you actually built a number of risky models for logistical problems where there was uncertainty, how many bad weather days, what the wave's going to do, the speed of loading, uploading, offloading, the delays on the train tracks, and like we could actually model all of that, and that's a very important decision making model. But the most powerful thing that I've ever done in terms of raising up competencies, risk management competencies, is of course incorporating risk as a competency, as an element into all other various existing business training programs. And that's why corporate universities are usually my best friends, because I just talk to them, well, what sort of trainings are they planning to do? Like, especially if they have leadership programs. There are large organizations in Europe that have had their kind of gold reserve stuff, and they have like leadership programs where they've outsourced the risk element to us for the last, like, I don't know, 3-4 years. Like, so every month we would do like a little module on risk within their leadership program for all the newly promoted personnel and just new hires and everybody else. So incorporating risk competencies into existing training programs is super powerful. Communication channels is the next kind of big focus area. And to me, risk culture has always been kind of the separate focus area. So I would actually have like a plan called my risk culture program. And that would have a number of initiatives that I had a separate person focusing on and making sure that we integrate into different training programs. The key is that the business doesn't really kind of expect you to be there. So you have to be constantly reminding them, like constantly remind the different HR teams and corporate universities that whenever they create a new training program, there has to be an element of risk in it, because they will forget, and they always do forget, and you have to constantly remind them and just be on their tail. So communication is the next area. I found that having a risk committee, even though it sounds like it's risk management one and it's just a facade, I did find that having a risk committee and being a secretary in it is actually quite a powerful communication channel. I was able to use it for getting validation and feedback on all of my methodologies, and it was a nice platform to talk about risks. So I've tried it a couple of times, and it actually proved to be quite a valuable exercise. I was not a big fan before I tried it once, but as soon as I tried it, I kind of thought, well, why not? Then, of course, part of communication is just integrating risk information into meeting agendas, speaking opportunities, writing texts, speeches for executives, like basically trying to put little risk messages into every opportunity you can identify. Running corporate events, I have, for example, Risk Awareness Week is kind of, or was kind of, my corporate risk event, because I would give free access to all employees, and dozens and dozens of people joined. And I know another very successful oil company in Siberia where they created such a powerful internal corporate risk event that became the biggest risk conference in the country, and they have thousands of employees joining in every year to learn and exchange experiences about risk taking. So communication, super important. Disclosure and reporting, again, all part of the game, because you never know what will have the most amazing effect on the risk culture. And so, for example, I have a lot of friends in risk management who put zero effort into their annual reports. They just let the corporate secretary write it. I took a very different approach. I wrote every single section related to risk management in the annual report. So do have a look at last year's Eurochem annual report, for example, and see what I usually say in annual reports, because I actually took a lot of effort. By the way, I killed heat map immediately, and despite the fact that at least 3 people came back to me saying, "But having a heat map in the annual report is best practice," I said, "No, it isn't," and we did something significantly different. And I actually tried to describe what we actually do in terms of risk-based decision making as much as possible, without going bananas, because annual reports are reviewed by people who expect to see certain things, because annual reports are risk management one. But then, of course, on the corporate intranet, we were working on the whole page with trainings, all the templates, contacts, dashboards for the key risk exposures like credit VAR, market VAR, operational VAR, and some of the insurance statistics. So that, again, in my mind, that's a given that must be in place. On the external corporate website, publishing risk management policy is usually a good idea. Some of the training sessions we made available publicly that we did. So just an illustration of the risk approach, that obviously all of the awards that we won, we made it quite public as well.